Hi, everybody. Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Before we get started with today's webinar, make sure to locate the Q&A button in Zoom control panel at the bottom of your screen, and feel free to submit any questions you have for our speakers today. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can. So thank you all for joining us today. We really appreciate it. In previous webinars we've hosted, we've discussed the importance of having accurate, up-to-date local listings. But how does your brand appear locally for those highly valuable, non-branded and long-tail search queries? Enter local pages, another key component for a successful, well-rounded enterprise local marketing strategy. Today, our expert panel will walk through what it takes to develop a winning local marketing strategy via location pages and what that looks like at scale for multi-location brands. Now, briefly, let me introduce myself and today's panel. My name is Scott McNulty. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Rio SEO, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. Just a little bit about me. I've been in digital marketing for about 10 years. I absolutely love things all digital, and I'm really thrilled to be with this panel today. I'm also joined by a wonderful panel of speakers on today's webinar, including Lauren Ettner, VP of Client Services at LSM, Steve Wiederman, Senior Search Strategist at Wiederman Consulting Group, and Danny Owens, Local SEO Consultant and owner of Pigzilla, which I love that name. To get to know our panel better, let's start off with a fun question and dive into a bit of our background in SEO and local search. So the question is, I think it's a great question, where do you want to travel to first for a vacation once quarantine ends? And then can you just touch on a little bit, first got you interested in working with enterprise brands and local SEO? So Lauren, let's start with you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Scott. Prior to COVID and everything shutting down, I was having plans to travel to Thailand. So I'm really hoping that come 2021, I can kind of pick those plans back up and get out there. So fingers crossed for me and fingers crossed for everybody else that we can get back to traveling. I got interested in SEO probably back in high school, mostly because I was just really interested in how Google's algorithm worked and what they chose to show, why they chose to show it. And so really started to dive into that way back when, and really started with some content writing and marketing for SEO. And it's just always changing. Google's always making changes, and it's just really interesting to keep up with. And multi-level brands have always been interesting. I always think it's great to see how a big brand can have multiple locations and multiple places out there and do well and be successful for it. So there's just so much intricate marketing and tactics that you can utilize.
Oh, that's fantastic. I couldn't agree more. Steve, why don't you go next?
You got it. So we're supposed to be celebrating our 20th anniversary right now in OilNet Bay, but here I am. So we're going to be at the British Virgin Islands, hopefully in November. So if we get to travel, late November, we'll be on this tiny little island celebrating 20 years. So fingers crossed. So I got into search like a lot of SEOs did. I started as a webmaster and it became a necessity. If you want us to still pay you to be our webmaster, you have to drive traffic. Like, well, how do we do that? And so search became a thing. I would say multi-location brands, how I got into it. One of the agencies we supported in 2012, 2013 was an automotive chain, and they just switched to responsive and they forgot to redirect their mobile URLs. So fortunately, we came in and kind of saved the day and helped them do some redirection. That pulled us into the account, and then we had to figure out how to scale 800 automotive locations, and we did that through creating some sub pages, and we got mentioned in the NatLo top 30 by Placeable as one of the top local marketing. Well, Meineke did, the company we were working with, and I just got excited about it. And so now we get to work with a lot of multi-locations and franchises, and it's kind of like all SEO, it's kind of an addiction, I guess.
That's awesome. That sounds like we're going to have some similar stories here. Yeah. And last but certainly not least, Danny, would love to hear from you.
Yeah, I think, when it's safe to do so, I'm looking forward to, we might be buying an RV at some point. So I would really like to go across the country and just check out random places, state parks, some outdoor type of locations, nothing too fancy. I just think that would be really fun. And how I got my start in SEO was probably 2011. It's 9 years now, time's flown by. And it was random. I just found a job posting on Craigslist for somebody to help with some marketing stuff. So what it was actually claiming and setting up Google Places listings, which are now called Google My Business. So after some work on that, I started getting more interested into the actual website aspect, like how to rank websites, technical on SEO and on-page local SEO and all that. So that's pretty much it. And now I'm here today.
Awesome. So real quickly, September's quickly approaching. I was supposed to be in the Maldives getting married. And that obviously is not happening. And there's zero chance that we're going to get married in 2020. So let's just get this year out of the way and move to 2021. And we're rethinking our strategy next year because the world is certainly a different place. I fell in love with SEO.
Somebody got trapped there at Maldives, and they ended up like a honeymoon couple. And so they were literally stuck there. What a horrible place to be trapped during a pandemic,
terrible.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my God, terrible. Surfing and fishing every day. What a horrible thing to have to do. I'd hate that. I started working with a company back in 2010 called eLocal Listing, all the way back to the days of driving pay-per-call with local pages, fell in love with digital marketing and haven't left since. Currently, I'm a part of an organization called the Location-Based Marketing Association. We're a trade association that promotes location as a marketing tool to enterprise brands. Just to get them to get up there and really adopt that location, whether it's beacons, whether it's indoor tracking, anything location-based. We're trying to convince brands to use this as a tool to reach their customers. So thrilled to be with you three today. I'm sure we're going to learn a lot. I really appreciate everybody being here today. So a few quick reminders before we get started. All attendees are muted. But as I mentioned earlier, we welcome your questions throughout the webinar, which you can send us by locating the Q&A button on the Zoom control panel. We'll answer as many as we can live, but if we don't get your question, we'll be sure to follow up with you afterwards. Feel free to send any additional questions to marketing@seo.com if you're following along on Twitter @Rio_SEO. We have released a blog post that goes into further depth on today's topic, so make sure to check out those resources section on our website for more takeaways. And finally, today's webinar is being recorded, and we will send a link to the recording as well as a link to our local pages playbook within the next 24 hours, so look out for a follow-up email from our team. Great. Okay, so let's get started with the discussion and the power of local pages. How can you use them to promote specific products and services, and how do they benefit brands of all sizes? That's a good question. As we know, local SEO focuses primarily on ranking higher in your local area. Organic SEO, meanwhile, focuses on ranking for a much broader range. How do location pages help assist with both of these areas? Lauren, I would love to hear your thoughts on this one.
Yeah. So one of the primary factors that Google's algorithm looks at is proximity for the searcher. So say I'm in Nashville, where I am today, and I'm searching for a massage. And one thing that Google's going to look at is what massage places are closest to me based on my IP address. So by having location pages that not only have the business information, they have the business address, the phone number, they also have localized terms like waxing in Nashville, and that information really matches up with the local listings. So the Google My Business, your Apple Maps, your Bing, whatever it might be, that cohesiveness and that proximity with the address are all different factors of how those local pages can help, not only from an organic ranking, but also local on Google My Business.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well done. SEO is meant to satisfy a user's intent, that's for sure. Danny, I think you'd be great to answering this one. How do you bring this logic into developing a winning local page? What are some of the essential features and elements brands should incorporate to make those pages successful?
Well, to satisfy the user's intent, you need to think ahead about what the user might be looking for when they would land on a location page. So typically, they're going to be looking for where are you located so that it can come to your location. Or they might be looking to say, well, what can I purchase from you? Can I buy it online, or can I pick it up in your local store? So depending on the way your business runs, you need to think that out so that when it comes to building these location pages, you can put those answers right on the page for you.
And Scott,
awesome.
we actually
yeah, go ahead.
I want to chime in here if it's okay. We ran a study
Absolutely.
to try to understand across 101 different food and dining chains. What were the common attributes of those pages that really seemed to perform well? And you know, I'm happy to share some of the data with everyone after the event. But you know, things such as open now statuses and listing your menu. One of the things that's really been helpful on a multi-location level to have an actual local landing page for is attribution. If you can put a coupon or do some sort of a QR code, you can actually do some really good online to offline attribution. So when somebody does a keyword search, you know, you can track that into an actual order. The other thing is, why give away all of the traffic to Google My Business and Yelp and other directories when that could be your traffic? So by creating some of these local landing pages, it enables you to absorb that traffic and to implement remarketing and to do some other things instead of just kind of giving that all away. It also gives you more control over what users see in the search results. Yelp isn't always the nicest website when it comes to which reviews they want to display. So if you're able to showcase happy people, happy reviews, good videos, when somebody lands on your page because they see it higher than Yelp and other listings, then you have a little bit more control over trying to get them you know, into your store or your restaurant. So again, I'll share more of the stats after the event, but you know, we studied well over 100 you know, different local landing pages to see what those common attributes were, and it was obvious why local landing pages were so important, both to control as well as to you know, to attribution.
Great. I just got a great question in that I thought I'd share with the teams. I think you all have a little bit of insight into this. How do organic SERP rankings correlate with map pack rankings? Question. Do reviews impact both?
I can hop
Anyway,
in on
do you
the
want-
first part
yeah,
of it, if
yeah.
that's okay. So how does the organic rankings correlate with the Google My Business rankings, was the question, right?
Yep.
So the Google My Business listing ranks with a number of features, of course. We're not sure of all of them, but we do know whatever website you link to in the website section of the listing, that will influence its rankings. So if you have your website got great, you know, SEO done on it, you have really good content, the technical aspects are working well, you've done keyword targeting and optimization. If the site itself is functioning well, then the Google My Business can function well from that as well. It kind of feeds off of that.
Yeah, I agree with Danny. When we look at you know, what ranking factors help with both organic and with maps, and maps, you know, there's four things, right? Your data accuracy, it is your local landing page, which will contribute to organic. It's the business reviews, business citations that you find across the web, or that Google will crawl and find across the web. And then it's reputation, you know, your ratings and reviews. If you've done those four things, you're going to do well on maps. And if the landing page better is more helpful than the Google My Business listing, then you're going to have dual placement. You'll have the placement in the maps and in the organic. And if you've got a city page because you have multiple listings in a city, now you've got maps and you've got a city page that exists in organic, each serving their purpose. You know, one to get them to the specific location, and one to give them a list of locations that you have in that city for a city query, like restaurants in Anaheim, for example. So I think they do play together, with the local landing page being, you know, the element that that binds the two to help with both. But you could get even more saturation if you do have a city page, assuming you have multiple locations in a city.
Awesome. And then Lauren, I know we've talked about reviews on previous webinars, but what do you think about reviews' impact on both those organic pages and local pages?
Yeah. One thing that we always like to try to encourage our brands to implement on their local pages is adding in reviews on their pages. That way you can include review schema that will then also show up on the organic listing. So not only are you seeing a good review rating, hopefully, for a business on your Google My Business and your map pack, but you're also seeing that with a review schema that's pulling in from that local page.
Yeah, Lauren's right that, that reviews will come from that schema, but the differentiator is the native review side. So if you really want those star ratings and want to have a better chance of getting them underneath your listing, and I know there's a lot of talk about them going away. They talked about it a while ago. They're still there. The stars in the results do help your click-through rates, which serve the user behavior signal for ranking. But using native reviews gives you user-generated content, and it gives you content that qualifies, you know, for that rating schema. If you just pull in Yelp listings and other third-party listings, Google sort of frowns on that, and it won't, long-term, it won't really help you get those stars in the results.
Awesome. That's fantastic, you guys. I think we all agree on that. They're incredibly important. So I'm going to switch it up just a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about brands that have multiple locations. If you have more than one location, don't we think it's worthwhile to create a location landing page for each store? Why or why not? So Steve, I'm going to throw this to you to start, and we'll move through through the panel. Can you share some thoughts on this? And then kind of as a follow-up question, do you have any tips for mastering this at scale?
Sure. Yeah. Well, a lot of mastering it's going to be testing. I think by having a local landing page, you have the ability to have a voice and a personality for that location. You enable users to see location pictures and images and videos and things that really correspond to that particular location. Events that are coming up. When we do event markup on local landing pages with the restaurant chains, we get an extra row in the search result with a link to whatever that event is when that event happens. So there's sort of an unlimited amount of opportunities between the markup and rich results that you can have in the search to the personalization and sort of location voice that you have on those local pages. There's so many benefits, I think, to actually taking the time to see what users interact with. So one of the things that I've seen work really well is the surveys. People come in, if they're willing to do a survey, they get $5 off their next order or whatever. And you ask them, what would you like to see on our webpage, that would be compelling to make you want to come in more often. You get that user feedback, and now what the people in your area, your customers, really want, not just a global survey of what somebody in New York wants if you're in LA. I think that's probably the primary reasons you would want to have a local landing page.
Yeah, I know here Rio just absolutely believe in that philosophy. Hyperlocal landing pages help brands really compete for those keywords at that hyperlocal market. They want to talk to those consumers in that market, and that's what those pages are there. Go ahead. You were going to say something, Laura?
Yeah, I mean, just two things to kind of go off of what you had, Steve, is one, it's just going to take up a lot more real estate on Google, on any search if you have a lot of those local landing pages. And then two, it's also just better for user experience. I mean, have you ever gone to a website and you have one page, it lists all the locations. There's no way to search for a location. There's no map. There's no way to see if the location's open or how to call the location. It's just there. So I think by also having a dedicated page for that location that has specific details about it, promotions, offers, hours, it just helps from a user experience standpoint, which keeps people on the site longer and improves other just key metrics.
It's not easy. It's not easy when you're talking about 1,700 or 4,000 locations. We're working with 4,000 storage locations. How do I scale this? Is there a way to create hyperlocal content at that level? And as we hit on a moment ago, that user-generated first-party review content can really be the catalyst to giving you that hyperlocal content that you're looking for.
Engagement.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. So quickly, moving on now, what are some of the best practice and items brands should consider when developing a local page template for their locations? Danny, I'm going to let you have a go at this question.
Just to clarify, do you mean the content on the page?
Yeah, so just kind of the template. So when a brand is thinking about creating these hyperlocal pages, what are some of the things that they should be thinking about from a templates perspective? Content, imaging, some of those things we've already talked about, couponing. Yeah.
A lot of stuff. So the first thing that to me is really important is if all of your location pages have very similar content, they can be seen as not high quality to search engines, and they might not rank very well. So the more unique that the content is, that's more beneficial. And then of course, it's also helpful to the local users in that area. So some things you want to, of course, include, which might have been touched on, is the business name, address, phone number, and website, the link to the location page, embedding the Google My Business listing so they can click and get directions quickly. The hours, they really want to know, are you open or not right now? It's been mentioned to include reviews. Really important to include those local reviews. If you can filter them to just be for that location. I have an example from Best Buy. They do a really good job at that. I want to mention any services that location offers, because not every location offers the same ones. Team members, for that location can be unique content if you want to put a manager or some of the leaders there. And then this is not scalable, but it kind of is. I recommend if you have a questionnaire that you could give to each one of your store managers where they can actually write some content for you, then you could add that to your location pages. And that would kind of help to get that a little scalable, but it's a little more unique as well.
That's a great suggestion.
It
Absolutely.
takes some nagging for sure. I know on our checklist, we start out with SEO fundamentals, like making sure that we paid attention to security, privacy, accessibility, mobile friendliness, you know, where there's little or no keyboard required, right? You can tap your way through an experience. And then, you know, as I mentioned a minute ago, there's that sort of laundry list of best practices for, you know, for hyperlocal. I mean, you touched on most of them that we use too, like the driving directions that Google embed, the hours, today's hours, definitely using, you know, local business markup or the sub item type for the type of business that you're in. What else have we used? Links to your social profiles for that location can support Barnacle SEO, so that if you know you can't beat Yelp for a listing, then at least it'll be your Yelp listing that appears. So yeah, I think those are pretty similar to what you're saying, Danny.
Awesome. I got a couple great questions here. I'm going to jump into this one and give it to the team. Has anyone run into duplicate content issues using stock images or the same image on multiple locations?
I haven't had any issues with using stock image, but it doesn't help the rankings. I think if you can do location images and have them be moderated and unique, that, you know, we saw as high as a 20% lift in overall search engine rankings by having custom images that were for that location. That made a huge difference, and the users appreciate that. They feel like you took the time, you know, to really show them the location, and they'll recognize it. Like, oh yeah, I've passed that a few times. I know where that is. I don't think there's duplicate content problems with having it. I just don't think having that stock image or that single brand image or logo across all the pages is benefiting you any.
Yeah, I know at Rio, we definitely on our team look to try to help our brands communicate with those local store managers, try and get some local photos to inject into those pages, because it definitely makes a difference.
It's like pulling teeth.
And then another question here. It says, I agree. Do you have any helpful tools to post GMB offer posts in bulk? So I know at Rio we utilize the bulk API to be able to push things into GMB via Google Posts. Anybody else using anything else too?
I think they're talking about the posts, right? They're not talking
Google
about
Posts,
updating. Yeah, I don't think there is an API or automated way to to use Google My Business posts yet. I hear a lot of people talking about ways and iMacros and stuff that they've created to try to make it work, but to my knowledge, everything has to still be manual as you're doing the Google My Business posts. It would be nice if there was a tool that could do it for sure.
So go ahead, Lauren. Yeah, I was just going to you next.
We actually have been partnering with our Rio reps to actually be posting out through your guys' bulk uploader. So we actually just posted one yesterday for about 800 locations that all have custom URLs to their location pages with custom UTMs to track back. So it's been our best way.
With Google My Business posts?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I got another question. I love these questions that are coming in the Q&A button. And Danny, I'm going to throw this one to you. It says, hi, on our local pages, we have driving directions on our pages, but they are powered by Bing, not my choice. Would using the GMB listing be a better choice to increase ranking on the maps because of engagement with GMB?
Possibly. There's a patent from SEObythesea.com, I believe it is, that alludes that Google might be counting clicks on driving directions buttons on the Google listings. So that's one of the reasons you want to embed the Google My Business listing on the page itself, because it's possibly a ranking factor that if people click on the directions button and takes you to Google Maps, that might affect it. I can't say for certain, but there's many
silly, doesn't it?
Beneficial as well, besides just that one.
Right.
I always like to say that. I always like to say Google just loves when you use Google products.
Which is
Totally agree.
unfair, which that's, that's not how they should be rating web pages. Hey, if you use more of our stuff, we'll rank you higher. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's worth testing for sure. But, what most important thing is just making sure what you're giving your users is the best. And even if it's not benefiting your ranking, you can find a way to use something that will. So do what, you think your users appreciate the most. And if they appreciate the Bing maps and Bing directions better, use Bing.
Absolutely. So I'm pretty sure everybody on this team is going to say that schema is a good thing that all of our local pages should have, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I got shaking heads. Okay,
Yep.
great. I got another question just popped up, kind of going back to the image thing as it relates to a logo. Is it better to have a stock image or a logo than no image at all on a location page?
I think more media you have, the better. I think everything's worth testing. Run a 3 to 6 week test. Change out your image. Look at your bounce rates. Look at the time on page. Look at your conversion rates. And if you see even just a 0.1% lift, then it was probably a good thing. Leave it in there.
Yeah, and I'll chime in. I mean, always make sure that your image is optimized. It's not so big where it's slowing down your site speed. Make sure that you have an alt text because obviously computers can't read images. So just continue to use those best practices.
Oh my God, we had a 2 meg picture on one of the shoe chains that we worked with several years ago, and it took the vendor almost 6 months to swap it out. And I'm like, look, I've optimized this. It's down to like 16K. Just load it up. And their stack was so complicated they couldn't even upload change to a picture. But yeah, it killed the page. Like really, I'm on 6 seconds and the page still hasn't loaded yet.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to change it up a bit. We just got a great question that I think is going to really kind of touch on where we're going to go here in a minute. So I'm going to switch gears to discuss a hot topic many brands are focused on right now, and that's highlighting COVID-19 safety measures they have in place for their customers. On your local listings, we recommend brands update their attributes and add a COVID-19 type Google post and update their hours if they're operating on a special schedule. Steve, how can brands surface COVID-19 related messaging in the SERPs through their local pages? Should they be adding social distancing language to their content on their pages as well?
I think it's absolutely important to tell your customers how you're handling it and how you're managing it. I think a jump to link on your local landing page to the COVID section of the page. If somebody does perform a query, if it's a non-branded query like restaurant that is, COVID proof or whatever term they happen to type in, then you've got a jump to link in your listing that will take them right to the section of the page to answer to it. And then at the top of the page, of course, you just have a little message, learn more, and it drops them down. I don't want to take too much away from the call to action and trying to get them to come in. So I'm not going to use that whole giant banner that a lot of brands are using. I'd have something obvious, but very thin, like a very top bar. And then they click it, it drops down to the lower part of the page and how they handle it. But on top of that, with COVID in mind, brands need to start thinking about the other ways people are searching. They're searching for restaurants with outside seating near me. They're searching for those types of queries. So I think addressing the content, not just to say, here's how we're handling COVID, but here are some things you're probably searching for that, that we do offer right now with the pandemic in mind.
Yeah.
That's a great response. Yeah, go ahead.
Your consumers right now, they know things are not normal. So we don't know what's happening at each business. Each business has different rules, regulations they've decided to enforce. So when I visit a site, like let's say a location page, I want to know if the business is fully open. Are they only allowing online orders or to-go orders? And what other guidelines I need to follow if I want to visit them? Like I don't want to show up and then be turned away. So any adjusted hours, of course, if you're allowed inside or pickup only, and then any requirements to enter such as a face mask. Those are things that would be great to mention.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know here in San Diego, they're doing a great job of giving restaurants the opportunity to go outdoors without permitting right away to keep the flow of business coming. So I'm sure those long tail keywords are restaurants near me, with restaurants with outdoor seating near me, right? And having that on the page is certainly going to help. Okay, so we're kind of talking about on-page content right now. I got a great question I'm going to throw out there to you guys. How can we help make sure our local pages don't compete with each other? How do you balance having one high-performing store with newer listings? It's a great question. Lauren, I'm going to start with you. How about that?
Yeah, obviously you don't want to implement the same content across all 5,000 locations. And it's hard to do. It's hard to be able to write custom content when you're looking at thousands and thousands of locations. The best way that we've kind of found to start with this and at least start A/B testing to see if the content that we're writing and the variations that we're doing is working is we'll typically start with laying out about 3 paragraphs of content and making 8 to 10 different variations of each paragraph. And then within there, adding in location modifiers. So pulling in the location name or pulling in the city and state. Yep, or phone number too, if that's a big call to action for that brand. So then that way, once we have 8 to 10 variations per paragraph and 3 paragraphs, we can put that into like a randomizer for content. And when we upload it, you're looking at hundreds to thousands of variations of that content that is custom enough to where it's not duplicate, and Google will look at that and still rank it positively.
Yeah, it's a perfect starting point. I think long term we want as much actual unique content as we can, but sometimes our clients and their franchises just don't have the flexibility to be able to answer surveys and Google forms and the begging and groveling and the phone calls you'll make to try to get them to give it to you. But I really do still stand by the user generated content side. If we can really pull in, some hashtag Instagram photos of people at that location. I think Creamistry, the little ice cream shop, will do that. So when you're standing there, in line, you can actually see your little Instagram post show up on their page, and it's kind of neat. But the reviews and ratings, I mean, it's like the easiest way you could, if you're getting native reviews and ratings, that's like the perfect way to get, some really good hyperlocal content about that location.
Yeah. And if you have the time, if you have the time for your brands to write this for all locations, but pulling in that custom neighborhood information. So what are some landmarks that are nearby? What are the street corners that your business is on? If you can get that for the number of locations that you work with, that we found to be very helpful too. Just takes a lot of time.
At the city level too, it's also easy if you're doing a city level page. It's also because there's only so many cities, that you're going to be serving. So one of the things that worked really well for us with the storage when we were creating content was talking about relocating to the city, city resources, phone numbers, things that people who are storing things would likely be looking for. That was sort of easy to come up with law firms that have multiple locations. It's the nearest courthouse. It's the police department and where to get the nearest, where to get your police report, the highway patrol information. So there's definitely an easy way to do that at the city level. At the property level, though, it is a little bit more challenging.
Great. Awesome. So I'm going to stay on this content thing because it seems to be of interest to some folks. So Danny, do you have any tools that you use or would recommend for developing content to help guide a brand's on-page strategy, or tools brands can use for competitive research?
I'll go ahead and comment on tools to develop the content, and it's not a software tool as you would expect. It's actually a resource. I'm going to mention a couple of resources today, and at the end I'll share a link to Bitly where everybody's in attendance can check out what I'm talking about. It's from Phil Rozek, and he's the owner of Local Visibility System. He has a great questionnaire for city pages or location pages. It has like almost 30 questions in there, some that we've already discussed. But examples are, reviews from the local customers in the area. Do you have employees in that area? Did anybody that works with you go to school there, where you can talk about the local, colleges there? Do you offer discounts to people in that city? Like, it's a great questionnaire. If you have time to fill it in, you're going to get awesome content. But of course, this would be difficult to scale unless you have some cooperation from your store managers. And then he has another resource about the 25 principles of building effective city pages, which is pretty much spot on with what we've been talking about today, of all those content ideas. So those are the 2 things that I usually use and recommend and share with people when I'm, saying, hey, try this, best practice. They're really great guides, and that's the tools that I use.
Great. Steve, I was going to ask you a question. What are your thoughts on using or borrowing images and quotes from Google My Business as user-generated content?
Sure. I was at Local U, I think 2 years ago, and I asked Google that question. I said, hey, could we use that content? And they say, yes, we want you to use that content. Feel free to use the images and and content that's on there. Even if you want to share some of the reviews, I just wouldn't wrap their reviews in rating markup or aggregate rating markup. But they absolutely encourage it. There's even widgets that you can embed on your page. And when you start embedding widgets and using iframes, a lot of that's not really going to benefit when the web crawler crawls the page and sort of qualifies your page, but it's still fantastic for user experience. So I would absolutely use the Google My Business widgets that are out there and available, and test them, see how they perform and how users interact with them, because it's a correlation causation. If the user stays on the page and they convert and they don't go back to Google and choose a different result, you're still going to benefit your SEO long term.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I'm going to circle back to COVID-19. Many brands kind of right now, and I know this, our focus at Rio is enterprise brands. And we've talked to so many brands recently that are recognizing consumers are searching differently. And many brands are kind of refining or redefining their keyword strategy for new services they may be offering, such as contactless payment or drive-through services. Lauren, do you have any advice for a brand developing or refining their keyword strategy at scale? And how can they ensure differentiation across all locations without the keyword stuffing?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many tools out there, like Danny said, and one of the things that you can even just start with is looking at Google Search Console, seeing what people are searching and getting to your website to start out with. You'll be surprised to see some of the terms that people search and actually get to your website, and you can even do some analysis of where you're currently ranking and if you need to pad in some more of those keywords to improve it. There's also other tools out there like SpyFu where you can see search volume. Search volume is obviously going to have the biggest search volume on just generic terms, but you can see some additional trends and Google trends specifically around COVID if somebody, like for instance, is looking specifically for outdoor dining, which I know me personally, if I were to go to a restaurant right now, I'd want to sit outside. So knowing some of those trends that are going on right now, using that to say, if I was a restaurant business, what are some of the things that people are searching right now with COVID, and how can I work those into my content based on the keyword volume that's coming in?
Yeah, you can even go as far as doing like an industry research. This is what sort of caused us to do our little study. Was we wanted to see what all the restaurants were doing, and what keywords were driving traffic to the restaurants. So you can use any tool like she mentioned, Lauren, you mentioned SpyFu, there's SEMrush. What you do is you drop all those competitors in there one at a time, you exclude their brand name, and then you run a little pivot table and you can see some common things that are happening. And I would, definitely use at least, 20 or 30. We went as far as doing over 100, but 20 or 30 so that you really can look at the industry as opposed to just a local competitor, since most of the time your local competitor isn't as aggressive as someone in a different city, perhaps.
Yeah, I think you just answered the question that just came in as for tips on researching local keywords at scale. You mentioned some great vendors that provide that can provide that at scale for sure. So what I'm going to jump to real quickly is discussing the importance of a dynamic locator. It's a powerful, customizable mapping tool embedded seamlessly in your website and empowers searchers to find services, agents, and vendors by city, by zip code, even points of interest. Lauren, this one for you again. How can a dynamic locator better help brands improve their local presence?
I think it kind of also goes back to user experience. If you're not having that locator tool, your customers are not going to be able to find the information that they're looking for quickly, and they're going to leave your page. They're not going to spend minutes even trying to find the information that they're looking for. And then by having a lot of that pull up in a search, so say somebody's searching for locations in a city, it'll also pull up the closest city or the closest locations based on that search. And then again, if you have that dynamic locator tool, if a user's search location is on, so if you're sharing your location, it's going to automatically pull in the locations closest to them. So that's just one less step that they have to do to find you, is it's automatically going to pull in the closest locations and again, have a better user experience for them.
I think Google put it in their SEO starter guide, didn't they? They actually put personalization as something that they recommend. So yeah, that makes total sense. And we definitely noticed a difference when we turned on the auto locating. Fewer clicks to get the user to where you want them to go ultimately, and just a great overall user experience.
I've been meaning to look into I've been meaning to look into how many people actually turn off their locator search on their browsers.
I never do.
I don't either, and I just assume people don't even know how to turn it off. So it's just more people that are, able to find you quicker.
Yeah. Well, we don't want those customers anyway, right?
No. They're not helping our brands, that's for sure. Awesome. So kind of quickly, any brand wants, or brands really want to be able to measure the success of their efforts, and that's no different when it comes to measuring their local pages performance. Danny, what goals or metrics do you recommend tracking for determining the success of local page performance?
Well, there's lots of metrics people might be interested in, but in the end, it all comes down to conversions. So we want to see what location, we want to see what location pages were landed on that led to a conversion. So if you're a local store and you want people to come in or contact you, you want to see what location pages were landed on that led to a phone call, click on directions, or a form submission. And if you're more e-commerce, you want to see what location pages were landed on that led to an online purchase. And you can do all that in Google Analytics mediumly easily.
Anyone else?
Well, rankings.
Anybody else? Any other thoughts?
Rankings, I think, are important. I think if you have an array of keywords that you're tracking across each location, which can get really expensive when you get into the thousands of locations, but I think that's an indicator. I think ultimately revenue and conversion are paramount, and it's really all the location is going to care about anyway is that data. But to get there, we need to improve tech, right? So if you're doing some technical, if you're working on some technical SEO attributes, set a baseline, and over the course of the year, every month, look at how close you're getting to hitting that KPI and hold your tech team accountable to improving those elements that'll play a role in it. On the content side, same thing. I think it's, looking at surveys every quarter and seeing the quality and the star rating that you're getting from those surveys back about how helpful the content is. I think holding each team accountable throughout the year to technical, contextual, and off-page KPIs is really going to be paramount to the long-term success, because it's so easy to get into set it forget it mode with each of those groups. So I think every month they're like, what are you doing to improve bounce rate? What are we doing to improve our visibility off the website? What are we doing to improve the quality and the quantity of ratings and reviews that are coming in? And every month that number should be improving, and everyone should be accountable to them.
And that's only going to improve going into 2021 with Google taking effect into the core web vitals. So that'll just continue to be paramount.
Poor business owners looking at core web vitals and going, I quit, I'm done.
Definitely. So it kind of leads me into this one, and I think this is for the whole team. It's kind of understanding that leveraging local pages at scale can be a challenging endeavor without the help of a knowledgeable partner. A lot of times we get this question at Rio is, how can a digital vendor add value in the build out of local pages? What are the benefits of using a SaaS company? Lauren, are there any industries you think should prioritize local pages? Have you seen them used in a creative way to increase foot tracker conversions?
Honestly, every business should just have a local page, and that's whether you have a brick and mortar store or if you own a territory. I know there's a lot of service-based companies out there that don't necessarily have a store or a location, but they have a territory. And that's just another way that you can have your business information out there, talk about the territory that you service to the brand. Any business that has more than one location should have location pages.
Absolutely. Danny, what do you think? Same?
Yeah, pretty much. If you have a place people want to visit in person, whether you have 10 locations or 1,000 locations, those location pages or city pages are super important. Food, restaurants, retail, shopping. And what Lauren was talking about is maybe like a plumber. Is that a good example, Lauren? A plumber that maybe has his van in his front yard, but has a service area. So those are known as service area pages, and they're very similar to the location pages, except for they wouldn't have their own. Well, I guess they could have their own Google My Business listing if they're a service area business. But yeah, I think that's
great.
Those are my thoughts on that. Yeah.
We're coming close on time. I got a couple really great questions I'm going to throw out to the team here before we wrap it up. What are some of the most important factors to rank as a service-based business, both in terms of location page organic rankings and GMB local pack rankings? Guys, take a stab at that one.
I think I mentioned those four in the beginning. Making sure your data is accurate, and if you want to do that at scale, that's where, Scott, you were just mentioning what's the benefit of a SaaS. It takes the management and monitoring of your business data out of the picture. So I would say if you have multiple locations, use a platform to manage that data accuracy. Continuing nurturing that local landing page, security, privacy, accessibility, mobile friendliness, all those things we talked about earlier. And just really just own it on the reputation review side. For earning business citations, there's sort of a law of diminishing return on that, but look at maybe using a tool like Whitespark to look at their local citation finder. Will actually tell you all the business listings that your competitors are in, both industry and hyperlocal. Forget about your hot frogs and your merchant circles; they're useless. But get those that are, if you're a lawyer, lawyers.com. If you're, in another industry, get that. So I would say that's where I would start with the map listings on the organic side. It's the standard SEO best practices. Earn some links by running events and asking your neighboring businesses to help you promote those events so that they, put name, address, phone number, and a link, which benefits both your map listing and your organic.
That's awesome. Yeah. Anyone else? Danny, Lauren?
Yeah, just to recap, they were asking what is going to basically help the rankings for their website and their Google listing in a nutshell. For a service area based business. Yeah. Local pages. Yeah. So the same factors that are going to impact any web page would impact service area pages on a website. So keyword targeting. So deciding what's the keyword they want to rank for, or maybe one or two for a location page. They might not have a ton they can fit into the page title. Of course, then that unique, helpful content, is it satisfying the user when they find that page? Is it going to give them what they want? It's kind of unofficial that there's engagement metrics that search engines might be looking at. I think Bing actually clarified that they do use them, and Google has stated they don't, but we've seen different articles on that kind of argue they do. So, and also some backlinks. If you're able to do some natural backlinks, especially in the local area where you're based out of, those are very helpful for those pages.
Great. And I've got the last question. Go ahead, Lauren, please.
The only other thing I was going to just chime in on is if you can have specialty pages within your location page that talks about the different services that you have, that URL, the H tag, all of that will just help overall rank for those specific services.
Yeah, we crushed it with that auto repair franchise I mentioned earlier by having a brakes page and exhaust page and oil change page underneath the local landing page. So yeah, you've nailed it, Lauren.
You guys are speaking my language, man. Specialty pages attached to a main page, attached to a city page, attached to a stage page. It's a beautiful breadcrumb that I think is just, right? Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I think we're about at time. I see some people are starting to drop off. So in conclusion, I know we've covered a lot during this webinar, and that's all the time we have for today. If there are any questions we didn't get to, we'll make sure to follow up with you afterwards. If you have any follow-up questions after the webinar, please feel free to send them to marketing@rioseo.com. As a reminder, we will be emailing you a copy of our local pages playbook with the webinar recording, which goes even further in depth on best practices for enterprise brands to win at local search and optimize scalable local pages. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. It's been amazing to be on this panel with you guys. You're incredible. I really appreciate your thoughts and insights in today. And I've really enjoyed it. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and I look forward to chatting with you all soon.
Thanks,
Danny. Thanks,
Lauren.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
See you guys.
It was nice.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.